Hi everyone! I'm so excited to share with you one of my favorite Passover stories. It's a story called the Matzah Ball Fairy, and it's a tale of a family around the Seder table when some little bit of magic goes a little bit awry. Now, I want to wish everyone a happy Passover. And I know that for some of us, our Seders are a little bit different this year. They've gotten us to be very creative about how we get together with our loved ones who are in different places. I hope that you have a beautiful and memorable Passover, and may next year bring us around our Seder tables once again with all who we love. The Matzah Ball Fairy by Carla Hamesfeld, illustrated by Vlad Gosner. One by one, Frida Pinsky dropped her matzo balls into the big pot of chicken soup. It was the first night of Passover, and the whole Pinsky family was coming to Frida's house for the Seder. "Please be light and fluffy," she pleaded as she stirred the matzo balls around the soup. "Please puff up and float." But the matzo balls just sat on the bottom of the pot like dozens of little stones. Suddenly, a soup bubble popped and splashed, and a tiny plump woman appeared next to Frida's stove. Startled, Frida jumped. Her soup ladle flew from her hand, pitching a matzo ball onto the counter with a wet thud. The tiny woman pointed a dimpled finger at the round lump. "You call that a matzo ball?" she gurgled. "Who are you?" Frida asked, now more amazed than frightened. "I'm the Matzah Ball Fairy." The woman sounded as if she were speaking through water. "I came in through the soup." As Frida stared open-mouthed first at her soup pot and then at the fairy, the little woman poked the matzo ball with her foot and said, "Like lead, isn't it?" Frida frowned. "A real fairy would help, not make fun." "But of course I'll help, that's why I'm here." The woman pulled a small envelope from her pocket. "Here," she pushed it into Frida's hand. "A pinch of this, and the matzo balls at your Seder will be the lightest, fluffiest matzo balls anywhere." Real magic. Frida couldn't wait. Holding the precious envelope in one hand, with the other she grabbed matzo meal, eggs, and oil and measured them into a bowl. The fairy watched as Frida began to add the powder, the powdery grains of magic. "Be careful," she warned. "Use only one pinch." Frida nodded, but she wasn't really listening. She didn't even hear the matzo ball fairy splash back into the soup pot. Frida blended the magic powder into the batter. It made her spoon cut through the thick mixture as if it were whipped cream. "If one pinch is this good," Frida said to herself, "imagine how wonderful my matzo balls would be if I used a little more." And she stirred in 2 more pinches of the magic powder. That night, all the Pinskys gathered around Frida's table for the Seder. When it was time for the soup, Uncle Solly's eyes opened very wide. So did his mouth. He gobbled up 4 of Frida's matzo balls and asked for another. These are the lightest, fluffiest matzo balls I have ever tasted, he said as he patted his stomach. Solly's absolutely right, agreed the Penskes from Vermont. Taking second helpings, they taste lighter than air. Indeed, nodded the Penskes from Florida as they held out their soup bowls for more. Even the Philadelphia Penskes, who usually didn't eat much, asked for seconds. Frida beamed as she watched her family eat. But then something very odd happened. Uncle Solly began to rise. At first it was only an inch or so, but soon he was hovering over the dining room table like a plump helicopter. "Get me down," he shouted. The Vermont Penskes grabbed at his legs, but instead of pulling him down, they began to float up too. As they circled the chandelier, the Florida Penskes, squealing loudly, joined them. "What's going on?" Uncle Daniel asked as he bounced gently along the ceiling. "It's those matzo balls," Uncle Solly said. "They were too light and fluffy." "And you ate too many of them," his wife scolded. Having eaten only one, she was floating only a couple of feet off the floor. The younger Penskes swooped about, trying to catch each other. "This is fun," they shrieked as they flew down the hall. "Get down this instant," their parents ordered. But it was hopeless. The whole family was floating around Frida's house as if they were matzo balls in a pot of chicken soup. There they go. Oh. "Just how much powder did you put in the matzo balls?" a gurgly voice whispered in Frida's ear. "Oh, thank heaven you're here," Frida cried. "Help us, how can I get everyone back down?" The fairy chewed her lip as she considered the problem. "They're floating," she explained, "because they ate something lighter than air. To come down, they have to eat something heavy." She looked around the kitchen. Her eyes lit up when she saw a pan filled with Frida's potato kugel. "There's your answer," she said, pointing to the pan. "Your potato kugel will do it. Give everyone a little of that and they'll come down." Frida cut the kugel into pieces, one for each floating Penske in the house. She dragged her kitchen stool into the dining room, stood upon it like a traffic officer, and as her relatives floated past, handed out the kugel. It worked. One bite of kugel, and each flying Penske bumped back to the ground. "This was a most remarkable Passover," Uncle Solly said when it was all over. "Tell me, what did you put in those matzo balls?" Everyone listened as Frida told them about the visit from the Matzah Ball Fairy. When she finished, Frida looked around at her astonished family and said, "I didn't mean to cause all this trouble. I just wanted to make light, fluffy matzo balls." "Why didn't you ask me?" Grandmother Penske asked from the big armchair. "I taught everyone in this family to make matzo balls, and I would have taught you too." "Oh," said Frida. "It's not too late. Come see me tomorrow. Together we'll make matzo balls like magic, but without magic." And they did. Thanks for joining me in reading the Matzah Ball Fairy.